don't you sit here?
Yeah, but,
I'm telling you how much I want to get this done. You know, when I came here, George, I said, I don't want to be involved in the Beatles or the Sinatra law. I'll make my own lawsuits.
Yeah, but if you do...
I'm going to get involved now.
You should do, because, we can talk, and he, but Basque was just very stubborn for a bit, but I think it's...
I think we can get it done.
Yeah.
I got my fat pin, okay?
I have another one.
Okay. You're a star again. You're a teenage idol again.
Fame at last.
Fame at last. Did he tell you what this is all about?
Well, I heard years ago you were going to do
I'm doing a book. It's not my book. So I decided to interview everybody in the world, and it's killing me. It's going to kill me. I've done 240, starting with Artie Shaw, Woody Herman, up till today.
The history of music.
And everybody's kind of story. You know, I've done Yoko, I've done Paul, I've done Jagger, I've done Elton John. I just want to talk a little bit.
Okay, let's go.
The Black Line was terrific, incidentally. That was incredible.
I was drinking Dos Equis. I got a little bit over the top of places, but it had some really serious moments.
It was marvelous.
I mean,
in fact, they're getting me a tape on it.
The girl who nearly committed suicide and all that. I mean, it's...
Tell me, I'll just get into this. How hard is it to be George Harrison? How difficult is it to...
Well, right now, it's getting easier all the time. It was very difficult once we got into the heavy period of the Beatles in the early 60s and through the mania. That was very difficult. Then we went through all the drug period, which scrambled our brains up, showed us a lot, but also presented problems too, trying to recover from that. And then after the Beatles split, and historically we all know there was all the legal problems and stuff like that, it took me a number of years to actually be able to come to terms with it. But I'm glad to say I've come out of the other end of that tunnel, and I feel really, really good about it. I mean, physically I feel good, mentally I feel good, and I'm a happy person in myself. All our problems are going away slowly, and I'm doing good personally, film company and everything. So it's really quite easy now.
But it has been, it's like carrying a weight around. There's a few of you in the world who've had to do that. A Jagger.
It's quite, I mean, I don't go around from day to day thinking of, I'm George Harrison of the Beatles. When people come up to me in the street or on planes or whatever, then, or the Hall of Fame, or when I'm out promoting the record, obviously have that frame of mind. But I try to balance my life with, peace and quiet, because the other side of it is real rowdy, when you get into the record business and all that kind of stuff. So I think that I've been a very extreme person. I'm a Pisces, you see. One half's going where the other half's just been. And it's been very extreme, extremely up or extremely down, extremely spiritual or extremely drugged. And now with a bit of maturity, I've brought the two extremes closer to the middle. And I don't get too far out, I don't get too up or too down, and it feels good.
Are you sick of talking about that? Well, it was only about an 8 or 10 year period at the most.
Do
you get sick of talking about that?
Well, not really, because that period was only sandwiched in the middle of everything else. Like I started at 14 or 15 with my guitar, and I met Paul and John at that time. We played in little events up until the 1960, when we started to do better and sort of do it professionally. Then we had the mania, and then I had the solo career, and I have all kinds of other little careers going on the side, like I had with the record company and my involvement with Indian music and Ravi Shankar, and now the film company. I have lots of hobbies, like I love gardens, because...
Well, there's no question you have
stuff like that.
Dimensions in your life.
Yeah, and I think that's all helped, because the Beatles was such a big part. I didn't want that just to be the end of my life. I came in 1964 into America, and we went out in 1969, and that's the end of the story. But it actually is just a continuing story.
Well, for so many who are either athletes or entertainers, that is the story, and they have nothing else to go with.
Here today, gone to Maui.
Why? How can you perceive? It's very difficult. You're an insider. Why this group, above all, 20 years later, we put out these compact discs, and this frenzy starts again. Are there any
Well,
things you can point
actually,
to?
what's happened is even before the CDs and this 20 years ago for Sgt. Pepper, there was always a period, like I think in the 70s there was a period when the Beatles sold again and became, I think it's each generation when they get to being, well, I saw it happen with my own boy. I didn't tell him anything about the Beatles, but one day he suddenly said to me, "Hey Dad, can you show me the piano riff to Bulldog on the piano?" And I thought, well, how the hell has he heard that? That's such an obscure tune in my back of my mind. But then I realized all kids, when they get to be 5, 6 years old, they all watch Yellow Submarine. And as they get older and they start getting into their teens, they somehow seem to discover the Beatles, and it has this lasting quality.
Do you have any idea if you ever had
I think whatever the quality was to begin with, why people liked us in those days, it's the same thing. There's some little magic chemistry that happened between us, and somehow it got in the grooves of those records. And not every song we ever did was brilliant, but there's a lot of them that are just timeless. They're great songs, and they just happen to have in the groove that chemistry that I think seems to appeal to each generation as it comes up.
When you wound it down, what kind of withdrawal pains did you have?
Of the Beatles?
Yeah.
Well, it was just mainly the sadness of, because we've been so close for so long. I mean, as Mick Jagger said at the Hall of Fame, the four-headed monster, we never went anywhere without each other. We shared all the miseries and the isolation of being in limos and hotels and planes and concert halls, which is all we ever saw for years. And that was the saddest thing, of us actually getting fed up with each other, as, not being able to. Although, at the same time, I would relate that to growing up in a family. When you get a certain age, you all want to go off and get your own girlfriends and your own houses and, split up a bit. But at the same time, it was the perfect chance for me, which I was eager to get into, with my own records, like All Things Must Pass, because, I had just not so many tunes, as you know, on the Beatles records, so it was like this constipation I was feeling, of musical constipation, and All Things Must Pass was like going to the bathroom and let it out.
You made at least one record along the way that didn't get a great reception.
Yeah, I had a couple.
How could you deal with that? Because
That's
you were
okay.
measured by another standard.
That was okay, because to some people, the success. This may be different for Paul, because I think he feels more like he has to be a success all the time. For me, I had such ego satisfaction through the Beatle period, and we had more fame than anybody could imagine. So when my records, the ones that didn't sell many, it didn't really matter to me. Like, as an example, Ringo once said to me, "I've got to have a number one, I've got to have a number one." And I said, "You don't got to have a number one. It's you. You aren't the number one. The record is the second." Okay, now it's nice now I've got my record doing well, and it's nice to have the success with the record. But again, as I say, if you set yourself up by looking for success, when you have a failure, you fall much deeper. So, as I say, to bring the two together, and as Bob Dylan once said, when you find out when you get to the top, you're at the bottom, and that success and failure are really, in a way, the same thing. So the only thing that I didn't like about it was the fact that they never really played anything on the radio. Now, I suppose some of it was to do with I got a bit tired working on my own, which is what I've been saying about this new album, why it's got that energy, because I was up for it, I got Jeff to work with me. And partially because I went into this thing where I was trying to do music and songs and lyrics that said something else. And quite frankly, the radio business. They don't want to play stuff like that. They want, your catchy little hits that they can just program in there and, not have to think too much about. And plus, by that time I got so fed up, I wasn't giving any support to the record label either. Well, on a couple of albums. Yeah. So they were the ones that consequently sold the least.
Tell me, what are your recollections of the Bangladesh experience, that you were such a key player?
Yeah, well, that was something which, because of my relationship with Ravi, and he being such a sort of humble person, he said, I'm going to do this show, but I'm thinking of how I can make a bit more money than I would normally be able to do, because he only doesn't make that much. He said something like, maybe we could make $25,000 per... Maybe you or Peter Sellers or both of you could come on and do something or announce it. And then he started telling me about the war. I read all the information about it. And I just thought, this is terrible. Something's got to be done. So I got on the telephone and, I said to Ravi, well, I think if you want me to involve, I better just be really involved. And I started recruiting all these people, and I spent the couple of months between making the decision and the concert just on the phone and rounded up all those guys. It was very, very difficult at first, but once it got closer to the show and I had commitments from some people, then it was like a snowball. It was hard turning down people, because then, everybody wanted to be on it. But what it was mainly intended to do was attract attention to the situation that was happening at the time. The money was secondary. Although we had some problems because of Klein and not handling it right, they still got plenty of money, which was still only a drop in the ocean. But the main thing was we spread the word and it helped get the war ended. And there's little Bengali waiters in Indian restaurants still come up to me today and said, oh, when we were fighting in the jungle, it was so great to know that somebody out there was supporting us. And I think that it was just a moral stance, really. And the money was secondary, and it's certainly shown and grown over the years that the musicians and people in the arts and entertainment are much more humane than the politicians. Because now what's happened, is like people accept it to do charity. When I did that, they said things like, there's always somebody negative. He's only doing this to be nice, or something. They still try and find a negative thing,
You take part in a lot of... You're always up on stage, not always, but you're in stage a lot of times with Eric Clapton and other people there. That's got to be a kick too.
It's great, I'm still a fan of other people, just like, we have our own fans, but it's a thrill. Our relationship gets better all the time. Like on this latest album I just did, with we've been through so many ups and downs together now. There's a real deep relationship between these people, like me and Ringo and Eric and Jeff Lynne and Ray Cooper and Jim Keltner and all these people who are my friends, Elton John. And it's a serious relationship now. It's not, we still have fun and don't get too heavy, but we know if we need each other for anything, that you've got a true friend.
Have you been writing songs on a regular basis over the last 16, 17 years?
Yeah. And even the years, like the last 5 years when I didn't have an album out, I've got tons of stuff. Like I said on Rockline, I've got enough stuff in my studio to make even Jim Reeves jealous.
You write by yourself?
Yeah, and this is the first time really that I've written with... I did write one tune with Dylan back in 1969. I wrote one with Eric Clapton, and I've written some for Ringo, helped him finish some songs. And I've done a couple of tunes with various people, but I've never actually sat there and said, let's write. They were always just quick situations until Jeff Lynne came along. And that was really good, because it's hard to write a tune. You reveal really your limitations and strengths. And I think more important than the most important thing to writing a tune with somebody else is to have a mutual trust and also to have a compatible background. And so it's not often... maybe other writers can just meet anybody and just turn them out, but for me, I need a relationship with somebody, so a trusting relationship. And with Jeff Lynne, I felt very pleased about that, and I just look forward now to really working with him, because that was just breaking the ice as far as I'm concerned, that album.
In the Beatles scheme of things, did you write off by yourself, or were you ever?
Yeah, everything.
You were on a separate track.
Every Beatle record that was a song of mine, I wrote alone.
Yeah. And never, that just the way it worked out.
Well, because those two had been writing anyway so much, and occasionally I got a lyric, a line from John when I was stuck, but at the same time, I gave them lyrics too. Like I wrote some lyrics in Eleanor Rigby and Come Together and things like that.
In remember the Sinatra record of
Stick Around Jack? You know, sure, he says, I mean, it's the greatest love song of all time now.
Yeah.
Started out of the year, then the decade, and that's very nice. I mean, that song had last count, which was years ago, there was over 140 covers on it. Yeah. I've got Smokey Robinson, Ray Charles. The best version of something is James Brown. And they reissued Think back in about 1972, and they used something as the B-side, and it's a killer. It is. I even sent him a postcard saying you should put it out as the single.
Has anybody ever heard it?
I've got it on my jukebox at home, but you know, it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
Are any other of your songs had? Well, nobody's had that kind of range, and none of them had that kind of coverage. I guess.
No,
but
there was obviously the ones I've like. Were the most well known, like Taxman. In fact, Taxman was just done a year or so ago by Berry Gordy's son.
Oh yeah.
And that had a few versions of it. And If I Needed Someone from the old Beatles, Guitar Gently Weeps had a few. Here Comes the Sun and Something, obviously, were the big ones of mine. My Sweet Lord had a lot, but I don't know how much that was to do with the publishing, sub-publishing deal, where if they got the covers, they kept most of my royalties.
Probably a lot to do with it. In the film business, has that given you the same kind of satisfaction as music?
It's given me a certain satisfaction in as much as it's not an easy business to get into. As a small company, you just go under very quickly, and a lot of this success has to be given to Dennis O'Brien for his persistence, for his expert management financially of being a penny pincher in many ways, but it's the only way we've been able to do it. And now we've gained such respect from the bankers because we've always lived up to our word with them, and we've never had a bad relationship with the banks. So now all the banks are all, phoning us up saying, hey, why don't you come with us? And now we even have some major film studios who say, look, we can't make films like you make them. Those small little films, there is this market for them, and we'd like to, have some involvement with you. Our deals are getting easier, because Dennis would have to make one by one each film meet, the three distributors, 3 people for the videos. Now we're getting it down where we've gained respect from the actors and from the industry as a whole, and it's also becoming a little bit easier.
Isn't this an interesting dichotomy in a career? You're back being a rock star and then a movie executive.
I know, it's funny.
Able to handle it all, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I keep in the side of the film company. Dennis does all the heavy business stuff. We've got a lot of good people. I've even got Ray Cooper, who was a drummer, used to be with Elton, well, he still plays with him. And that's the good thing, because with me being a musician and Ray being a musician, we've been through that situation when we were younger, where we think, we're the artists, we do all this, you don't know anything, you're just the money. And now it's a reverse role for me. So I walk in a place and they think, executive producers, it's the money. They see them as a problem because of their involvement with these heavies from the big studios. But I come in, and Ray Cooper, and we're actually people, who sympathise with them and can relate with them artistically, and that really does help.
You mentioned something on Rockline that you almost wish there'd be another group come along. And if you were casting it, if you were sitting here,
I don't see anybody.
What would you look for? How would you even orchestrate it?
Well, you can't orchestrate it, can you? Because anything that's really real, it just comes out there. It's built into the people who do it. I mean, you could put together bands like White Snake and sell 4.5 million albums, but it doesn't.
There's nothing lasting. That won't be around. They won't
But I
be
don't
selling
see
this.
anybody. There's going to be somebody.
Is it impossible to do it, given that you people set trails, you and the Who and the Stones, and you were so different from what had ever come before, and now everything is maybe just a little refinement? Is it that it...
Well, in those days too, don't forget that the record industry wasn't as big and powerful and as, how so much money and, I mean, everything's bigger. There's more people in the world. There's more, there's just more of everything.
To grab the
So there's more music and there's more opportunities, but at the same time, it's harder to find the real talent because everybody's got a certain amount of talent, and with all the equipment you've got in a studio, it's easy to make a record that can top the charts like a Debbie Gibson or whatever. I don't want to single her out, but that kind of thing.
But what does it take to become almost a culture starter?
I think it's born into you. I mean, it's like karma. This word karma, which comes from the Sanskrit, to do. It means really. It's like it's a accumulation of good and bad actions that we've done in our past, and it's just the thing of why are you Joe Smith? Why am I George? Why is Dylan him? Why is Sinatra him? It's bigger than we can't really analyze it. To know that, we'd know God really, because we all have our own karma, and we come into these bodies in this life, and we fulfill our karma or try to undo it or whatever. And in a way, it's like the Beatles. You can take them separately and analyze all their energy and all this, but when you put them together, astrologically and chemically, something strong takes place that even the Beatles don't understand. As Dylan said, to understand you know too soon, there is no sense in trying.
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding.
He is as great a poet and songwriter.
He is brilliant.
Yeah.
I think, you just have to listen to, just take one of his tunes, like Blowing in the Wind or Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, Tambourine Man. And I mean, to me, he is like... he makes William Shakespeare look like Billy Joel.
Tell me, the other night in New York, what it meant to you and what you felt being up on the stage with that crowd.
Well, it was sort of like I expected, which is that it was very stressful being there with that mob of people and all the undertones of New York, and the heaviness and the buzz of that city. And quite honestly, it was a bit chaotic, the organisation. I think Army has to get a better organisation. But once the induction ceremony started, I really enjoyed it. And as Mo Austin said to me, it mightn't appear to be much to you at the moment, especially when you're just trying to get a holiday after all this work. But if you go, it is history. It's going to be part of history, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy being there, and I did. I'm so glad I didn't miss it.
I said to Paul the week before, I was in London.
Yeah.
And I said, a lot of things come and go, but this will never be repeated. You will never, ever
get in the Hall of Fame again.
And never be on a stage with that cast of characters at one time.
He must be so sick with himself. Now, I don't know if it was Eastman who told him.
I think a lot of people all around him. I had gone to everybody around him.
But he should have followed his heart, because we were so close. We were just really getting together, and all this is coming together.
And it didn't happen.
He's the one who suffered.
Oh, of course. I had 4 seats saved on a Concorde that morning.
Yeah.
I had booked 4 seats. But I just wondered from your standpoint.
Yeah, I just thought it was a childish thing to superimpose, because from Capitol now, we're really the closest we've ever got to getting this out of the way. I think we can get it out of the way within the next month, and the problem Paul has with us dissolves immediately. Now, to suddenly drag that out and superimpose it on a situation that had nothing to do with that, in a way, it's not just him trying to needle me and Ringo and Yoko.
No.
It's like him showing a lack of consideration for the music industry
That's what I
and
tried to
his
put
own
it.
contribution
I say,
together.
I said, this has nothing to do with internal warfare, bickering. It's a one-time, it won't happen again.
Well, I bet he's as sick as a dog for not going. Yeah.
You remember, you were also, I'll wind this up now so you can go. You were part of a party that Ahmet was talking about that I ran at my house a number of years ago.
Oh, that was
Remember
brilliant,
that?
yeah.
That was one of the great...
Whatever happened to the Drifters, and
Yeah,
they were in
that's
that.
right, yeah, whatever happened to the Drifters.
I've still got the little book matches.
The book matches with the three pictures on there. Yeah,
Yeah, it's Jerry Wexler.
Jerry Wexler, Ahmet Nestory.
Ahmet Nestory, yeah.
You know, as we look back now, when we've been around 25 years and we hope we're around as long as we want to be around,
Yeah.
moments like that and other moments just pop right up in your head because it's not about having the hits.
No.
It's about...
It's like Mick Jagger said in his speech. I thought he was really good, what he said about the Beatles. But all I says, well, I'd like to think we're still all friends because they were some of the best times of our life. And it's true.
Thank you, Dave.